Hello, GRCSU, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Coaches. And today we are going to be talking about celebrating reading next week. And Corey has put together a great slideshow for us. And I just first want to take a minute to say to Corey, thank you so very much because you made such a cool new Bitmoji background. And I love it. I think it's very, very cool for the Read Across America in the background and whatnot that went out in the newsletter. So very cool. Props to you.
That's my my way to unwind, right? So probably not time well spent, except mentally. It was time very well.
Wellness, right? It's wellness. You could do your other work because you take some time to take care of you and do the things you love to do.
All right. Should we get started?
We should get started.
So Jenny had made kind of a great suggestion yesterday when we were talking about today's topic. And that maybe we want to start off by talking about a book maybe that we really liked when we were younger, and then maybe a book that we've read recently that speaks to us or you would recommend to colleagues. So who wants to go first?
I could go since it was my idea. Give Al a minute to think probably. He's like, what? So I have several books from my childhood, but one of my favorite books is Goodnight Moon by Margaret Wise Brown. And the biggest reason is it was something my dad read to me every single night when he was home. And it was one of the first books that I read. And I have read it to my children, and I have bought it for all of my grandchildren to pass down to them as well. So it has a lot of tradition in it for me too that makes it special. And then a book that I've read recently, I actually read it last year when it first came out on the Corey, help me. What's that list called? The
DCF list. I'm not sure what it's called now.
Yes, it was. It was the DCF list. Okay. So, and it's called Front Desk. And it is written by Kelly Yang. And it's about a young girl named Mia Tang. And she has the responsibility of running the front desk of the hotel that her parents work at. And they live there as well. And I'm going to kind of like highlight the scholastic version because I don't want to give anything away, and I have a bad habit of doing that. So she basically has 3 secrets. Her first one is that she lives in a motel, not a big house, with her immigrant parents. And the second is that her parents help hide immigrants. And the owner of the motel is Mr. Yao. And he ends up finding out. And the third secret is that she wants to be a writer, and her mother keeps trying to convince her that that's not the right path for her because her English is not good, and that she should go into think more about math and do things that have to do with math, but that's not what she wants to do. She wants to write. So there's a lot of really good topics in here. It's suggested for grades 3 to 5 and 6 to 8. I think as a read aloud for 3 to 5 would be great. There's so many different things that she goes through that are part of our everyday lives that is great. It's a great book. And it's based on a true story of the author's life. There's some actual pieces that she experienced.
Al, do you want to go next?
Oh, sure. So I don't know how far back in my childhood I really want to go in terms of books that I've read, but some of my favorite books that I read as a young person were the entire Chronicles of Narnia series, pretty much all of them. And I've read other books by C.S. Lewis since then as well. Fantastic set of books. When I got into high school, I read the Lord of the Rings series probably 5 times and the Silmarillion. Again, really great set of books. That was the kind of thing I read then. More recently, you want me to narrow it down to a book. Look, I have stacks of books laying around, right? And I just picked up a stack that was near me. So I've got stuff as different as this book here called 46 Years of Pretty Straight Going. It's the life of a family dairy farm. This book actually is pretty important to me because it's the story of a farm that's actually owned by a friend of mine in Weybridge, Vermont. And it pretty much talks about the story of that farm. I've got another book here called Banjo Craft. I've got a book called Making Poor Man's Guitars. I can't do that. I've got a book called The Folk Instrument Builder's Reference. Which is just, it's all stories of different kinds of folk instruments that people have built in throughout history and where they came from and why people would build them in the first place. And most of this stuff talks about a big part of why I got into this. It has to do with people who don't have the means to just go out and buy, a $500 guitar or a $500 violin. So what did they do? I don't know if you can see the picture there, but there's a guy playing a violin that he made out of a cigar box and a board. And that inspired me to make these kinds of things, right? So this is an old broken checkerboard that I glued back together and turned into a guitar, right? And so books can be read for a lot of different reasons. And yeah, that's some of what I've done recently. I have other books as well that are important to me, but that's just a sampling.
Love it. For me, growing up, one of my favorite books was Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild Things Were, to the point that I have a son named Max, who is named after the character. And then I think one that I've read recently, actually, I picked it up over break and probably finished it in about 2 days. I couldn't put it down. Was called Dear Martin by Nick Stone. And it is about a 17-year-old boy named Justice who comes from a pretty rough neighborhood, but he winds up going to, I don't know if it's a prep school necessarily, but it is a pretty well-to-do school in a well-to-do neighborhood. And he's on track to be going to an Ivy League school. And it just kind of documents some of the challenges he faces simply based on the color of his skin, to the point where he is involved in a drive-by shooting and his best friend winds up shot simply based on the music they were playing and the color of his skin. So it just, fantastic book, highly recommend it. It is a middle grade novel. I'm not sure if it was ever on the former DCF list or not, but I know that Nick Stone's books have been on the list recently. So highly recommend it. All right, so let's get into Read Across America. So I'm going to pull the presentation up. All right, there we go. All right, so I guess in preparation for this, we had talked before vacation about what to talk about today during our Coffee with Coaches. And Jenny had talked or thought about Read Across America because it's coming up. And that's kind of where we left it. And so I was just thinking about it over break, doing some digging, scrolling through social media, because sometimes that's just like mind-numbing way to kill time. You don't really have to think about it. And so one of the things that I kept coming across on my social media were things like this. And I sort of feel like before we dive into Read Across America, we need to stop and talk about and acknowledge some of what is our current practice. And so these were a lot of images on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all centered around Dr. Seuss and his works, and some of the work that he's done in the past that depicts Black characters. And the reason that we're going to bring this up today is that I think that we need to acknowledge this this work and learn from it and talk about it. But our conversation today is not going to be centered necessarily around Dr. Seuss. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to address it and acknowledge it. One of the things that I did want to talk about with his work was in regards to a study that was done in 2019. And the study looked at the characters in the books, and they counted how many human characters showed up in all of the Dr. Seuss books. And there are 2,240 human characters. And out of that 2,240 human characters, only 2% of them represent the BIPOC community. And for those of you that are not familiar with the term BIPOC, it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. So only 2% of the BIPOC community are represented in his books, and every single one of them is male. So the question that I think this really brings with some of his work is, who is being represented? Who are our children seeing? We talk about windows and mirrors in our books, and who are we seeing? Who are we representing? And I think that these books are not really representing the students that are in our classrooms. We have very diverse students. And so I think that with our teaching and with our celebrating, I think we need to be better about representing our students, the students that walk into our classroom every single day. So we have included a slide at the end of our presentation, which we will link into the YouTube comments when we're done, that does give you additional information if you want to spend some time learning more about Dr. Seuss. But what we would like to do today is really get into how can we celebrate Read Across America Day in a way that's diverse and inclusive for our students. So a little bit of history. I was not familiar with Read Across America Day other than it is a day on March 2nd. I knew that much. So I did a little digging and learned that it actually was launched in 1998 by the NEA. Had no clue. And that to this day, there is a committee of educators who drives this. It was created to motivate children and teens to read through things such as events, partnerships, and reading resources that are about everyone and are for everyone. That Read Across America is actually not just a day, it is intended to be a year-long program. We do celebrate one specific day. We celebrate Read Across America Day on March 2nd, and it happens to be during National Reading Month in March. And the last piece of information that I came across was that in 2018, the NEA made the decision that Read Across America would no longer partner with one particular book publisher or character, because they recognized the growing need for schools and libraries to include and promote diverse books. They knew that we needed to start representing all of our students. So how can we celebrate? We found some really great resources that I thought we could spend some time going through. So the first one that I had come across was this Read Across the Diverse Regions of America. And so if we click on this, hopefully. We are brought to a blog that I've looked through a bit, and there's some really great resources beyond the one that I'm going to show you. But this blogger talks about reading across the regions of America. So we teach our students 5 different regions in America. And so what she's done is she's gone through each of the regions and she's picked books that highlight the people and the cultures of each of those regions. So you have the Northeast with different books. You have the Southeast, and you can go through all of these. And some of these are books on topics that we are familiar with. Like I think many of us have seen the movie Hidden Figures, or maybe we've read the book. I know a teacher who has used Whoosh, which is the inventor of the Super Soaker. What kid wouldn't love stuff like that? And so her suggestion is maybe pick a book from each region to highlight. And each of these regions highlight just very different kids or individuals. So if you decided to celebrate, I know sometimes we would have like kids from high school come over to read to our students, right? And maybe we'd have an activity every day, and we'd make Read Across America an entire week-long thing. So you could highlight a different region each day. And it's next week, so you could do this for next week. The next resource actually comes right from the NEA's Read Across America website. Now they have got a ton of stuff on this website, so I highly recommend that you go through and just check out everything. But what we're going to look at is they have a calendar that they've created, and each month they're highlighting a different theme. And within that theme, they are giving you book recommendations for the elementary level, the middle level, and the high school level. So themes like empowering student voice, fostering inclusiveness, activating young citizens. These are things that we're already teaching in our class through the curriculum, through transferable skills. So you can take this in each month, focus on a different topic from here, and read a book to include into your reading unit for that month. So if we look at March, we have Cultivating Compassion. And if we click on this, they have got 3 different books here that they're going to highlight. So we've got the elementary, we've got Tiara's Hat Parade, middle grade, Each Tiny Spark. Should be able to click on it. My internet running a little slow. There we go. And They Call Us Enemy. So all 3 focus on their topic of, what do we say, compassion, but very different cultures, very different characters, including all of our students that come through our doors. They also give you related events for the month, so you can see what other opportunities are out there for your students. So March is National Reading Month. It's Women's History Month, Read Across America Day, and Pi Day. And they give you some different tools and resources that you can use to learn. Here, I have Dr. Seuss What to Read Instead. This was a blog post, or excuse me, not a blog post, Instagram. What is really cool about this one is that this person went through and took books that we often use to teach skills to our students. So for example, Green Eggs and Ham, we use it to teach repetition and pattern. So here are some other suggestions that you could use to teach these same exact skills. Another example, Fox and Socks. So we're teaching alliteration. So here are some picture books that you could use to teach the skill of alliteration instead. We have a module that our team created. And this one actually was sparked by Jeannie Phillips, who is a school librarian. She also works for the Tarrant Institute, and she's done a lot of work with our team around facilitation. And this goes through and talks about completing a diversity audit for your classroom library, really going through and looking at the books that you have in your classroom and really analyzing who do our students see in these books? What are the topics? What's missing? So there's a bunch of resources in here. This one is, if I still had a classroom, I would be doing this. And it also talks about including your students, which I thought was really cool. And they give examples. I want to say it's Ottaquiche that completed this with their students and got their students involved in the process of doing a classroom audit. And they are school, I can't remember if they go up to 8th grade or just 6th grade. So it wasn't like it was high school students doing this. These were our intermediate to middle school students doing this. And then
So
finally,
Corey, just up for a quick second. So I actually did this with my own personal library that I have at home that my grandchildren, the books that they look at and read, I went through those books that I had and asked myself, does this give a good representation of who they are, but who the people that they might come into as well, right? So you don't have to just have a classroom to do it.
And I love that, Jenny, because it kind of starts with us, right? So, you know, and I'm thinking we did a little bit of work last summer, my oldest son and I, you know, we didn't necessarily go through the books that we have at home, but we did make effort to really diversify the books that we purchased last summer, because I know what's in our house is very white, is very middle class. There's not a whole lot of diversity. So I think doing it at home is really great too. The last resource that I have is another blog post from the same person who did the diverse regions of America. This one she did with, it's specifically picture books, but I'll tell you, older kids love picture books too, so don't count them out. And this one is just 50 inclusive picture books that you could use to read for Read Across America. So she goes through and she just highlights each one, and there's some really great books on here, and probably books that I know some have been Red Clover books. I want to say the Tightrope one, I can't remember the name of it, but so all sorts of picture books right there.
Walking Between Towers or Walking Between the Towers?
It's probably like giving everyone a little seasickness watching this scroll by, so I'm trying not to scroll too fast. I'm trying to also get to where we want to be. No, right there. Yeah. Okay. So the Man Who Walked Between the Towers. So I think that was a Red Clover book at some point, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but so those are the resources that we wanted to highlight that you could use next week, specifically on March 2nd, all year long, because as the Read Across America, I don't know if it's an initiative, a foundation, I'm not quite sure what they call themselves, but the intent is to celebrate reading all year long, not just on March 2nd. If you are interested in diving deeper into Dr. Seuss, we have put additional resources. There are a lot here. It is overwhelming. But what I did was I highlighted a couple here that I felt were nice entry points that would be, if you're ready to begin this work, that those might be places that you would want to start. And then I liked this that Read Across America had on their website. Just let's share stories that raise up the many voices that need to be amplified and heard. And I thought that was just a nice thing to keep in mind as we move forward with reading, is really paying attention to whose voices are being heard in the books that we're reading and whose voices are not being heard. So I spoke a lot, I feel like. So what questions or comments do we have? What conversations do we want to have? I think, Jenny, you and I were talking about this earlier, and you know, I think this is a really difficult conversation to have. And I think part of what makes today's conversation really tough is acknowledging that someone that we grew up with, whose work we grew up loving, now we're having conversations about what do we do with that. And someone had said in one of the many blog posts I had written that, we can have someone be a beloved author and have them also be problematic, that there can be many sides to people. And so we need to start doing the work and acknowledging those many sides.
I'm sorry I was late today. But I learned so much reading through these resources. I got a chance to preview them. And really in every school that I ever taught in every school I was ever a principal in, we celebrated Dr. Seuss on Read Across America Day. And it was just, something we were proud of, something that was exciting and fun, and just this huge celebration for us. And reading through some of those things that were posted on these links and really reflecting, I found myself having that moment of like the 7 stages of grief, and and dealing with the reality of problems that I didn't see and was not aware of. And having been out of the classroom now for a little while, I didn't even know that the NEA had moved Read Across America Day and shifted the focus of it a few years ago. So that was new information for me. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to pull this together and create resources that are accessible for all of us, administrators and teachers, to start really looking at and thinking about how we move forward in this work in a way that's really going to benefit our students and us.
Yeah, definitely not easy work. But nothing worthwhile is ever easy, right? It's to be completely transparent. So yes, Corey and I were having quite a conversation about this, and Dr. Seuss was like, it's how so many of us learned how to read too, right? That and Dick and Jane, and one of my screensavers is a quote by Dr. Seuss, because to me it says like, it's you're never too young, too old to drop what you're doing and pick up a book and read to a child. I can't think of the whole quote right now, but and it's so true. Like, it speaks to just stop and read to kids, right? And how important reading is. And I'm like, okay, should I take that off my computer now? And so there's a lot to still think about and learn. And I think being comfortable with being uncomfortable is where we need to be at, if that makes sense.
And if you think, Jenny, about how much work our team has done to get to where we are, I mean, it's still uncomfortable to have conversations and to acknowledge things that were really, really dear to us. I mean, I want to say the work began 2 years ago, 3 years ago, with our collaborative practices course. Mm-hmm. But I think the most important thing is to start acknowledging and just to start having the conversations, finding people that you can be comfortable with. I mean, Jenny and I have conversations all the time because we know that we're not going to be judging, but that we can be open and honest. And if she says something that is offensive, I can call her out on it. And if I say something offensive, she's going to call me out on it. So building that relationship with each other so we can have those conversations has been really, really important.
I really like how the NEA approached this whole piece. I think in so many organizations now we're seeing people really be more reflective on historical practices and the kind of information that they've put forward. And they've really taken this opportunity to say, like, let's be honest and transparent about it, and let's switch our focus in the direction that it needs to be. And I love that Instagram piece that you found, Corey, too, with the samples of the books that teach the skill, because so often for us, our go-tos as teachers are things that we're familiar with, right? Because everybody's busy. So trying to find time to explore new children's books and those kind of pieces. Our librarians do a wonderful job of it. As a classroom teacher, it's hard to keep up on the newest literature coming out. And when you're trying to teach a concept or a skill and using literature to do so, it's great to have a handy reference guide to be able to be like, oh, look, here's half a dozen other books that do the same work, but in a different way, in a more inclusive way.
That Instagram post, also a little bit unrelated, made me remember how much I personally love alliteration, and I probably really should get on writing some books that are equity based about alliteration. I'm like, this is gonna happen. What can we call it? Jenny's I don't know, I got nothing today.
You'll come up with something.
I'll come up with something.
Jenny's Journey.
Ooh, yes. Oh, that's a good one.
I love alliteration too. Don't get me started. It'll be like puns all day long.
All right. I think our time is coming to an end, but I think it's worth putting out there that if anybody wants to talk, the coaches are always here. We have a team. I'm not sure what their official title is. Lisa, maybe you know what the team's name is, but
equity team for right now. Equity inclusion team. They've had a couple different names. I can't remember what our most recent one was. And the rock stars who are trying to stay focused on this and start having these conversations with each other and their colleagues.
Yeah. I'm not sure if every building has representation or not, but I know that they would also be really happy to sit down and start conversations with people as well. If you need any resources, reach out to us. We're here, and we'd love to help you continue this work. And we'd love to hear what you are doing next week to celebrate Read Across America. So share with us, send pictures, little anecdotes. We'd love to hear.
Yep. The equity committee is coming to In-Service, right? They're going to do something at In-Service Day too.
Yes.
Yep. Another chance to have these kind of conversations.
And I know there's some fun things planned. I know that Wells Village School is having a March Madness event around reading and literacy, and so that'll be kind of cool. I'll be sure to help them post some things, and we would love to hear what other people are doing too. Like Corey said, that it's fun. We love literacy and reading. All right. Well, until next week, happy reading, everyone.